Welcome to Mother Daughter Projects. I'm Steph.
I'm Vicki.
And today we're going to retile these outdoor steps. Now, we've been wanting to do a tile project because we've never done one before, and we didn't think our first tiling project would be at the front of Mom's house, but this really kind of presented itself.
Oh, it presented itself in a really big way. I rarely use these front door steps, but one day I did for some reason, and I stepped onto that first step, and I heard that unmistakable hollow sound of tiles that aren't firmly attached. So I bent down and took a closer look, and within seconds, 3 of those big tiles just popped right up, and I was like, okay, there's an issue here.
So we headed to Home Depot to talk to the tile department about what materials we would need, got all those, headed home, we were able to clean off all the old mortar, and right before we were going to reattach those first tiles, I started looking at the next set of steps and realized some of those were loose too. So as we're looking at all of the sea of tiles not attached, we realized it was a bigger project than we expected.
So we went back to the Home Depot. We talked to the same tile associate and we showed him pictures and told him what was happening and said, is this something that we need to just hire out? And he was so encouraging and he said, no, I think you can do it.
So come join us as we show you how we went from this to this. The 3 major issues we wanted advice on when we went to the Home Depot were, number 1, how to reattach the front vertical tiles as they were installed with a very large gap, which we think led to the separation that we're dealing with now. The second item was how many tiles to replace as not all of them were loose. The third issue was how to cut the tile. We'll address all these in the video, but let's start with step 1, removing the old mortar. This was the most labor-intensive part of the project, and we tried a couple different methods, but what worked best was a rotary hammer with chisel blade. We own this tool and surprisingly use it often in various projects, but it's also a tool that you can rent from the Home Depot rental. I played around with different configurations, but found it easiest to sit on a stool with the chisel blade flipped down and the handle facing down to give me the best leverage. Mom also followed with a wet-dry vac to collect the dust, as you don't want to breathe this in. We're also wearing respirators, goggles, and hearing protection. And I'm wearing my steel-toed work boots. This is when we decided to remove all the tiles from the first and second steps to give a more unified look. We also used the rotary hammer to carefully remove the extra tiles that were not loose. We try to keep as many tiles intact as possible as we're going to clean the excess mortar off them and reuse them. Once the mortar was removed, we moved on to prepping the tiles. First, we used a chisel and mallet to remove the old grout. Mom used her Fin multi-tool with carbide rasp attachment to clean off the back of the tiles. Next, Mom cleaned all the tiles. Along with cleaning the tiles we're going to reuse, she also cleaned replacement tiles that have been stored outside for 12 years. We'll cut them next. With all those clean, we loosely placed the tiles to figure out what needed to be cut. We cut a few tiles to start, but we'll cut the rest later in the process as we're not exactly sure the sizing until we have the mortar in place. To cut the tiles, we're using a 5.5-inch circular saw with multi-flooring diamond blade that we picked up at Home Depot. This is designed to cut a variety of materials including tile, marble, quartz, granite, glass, and more. We also use our Makita track saw rail as a guide, so we got a nice straight cut. Mom followed with the wet-dry vac to collect the dust, as again, this is not good to breathe in. We laid all the tiles in place to make sure the layout was good. We mixed up the mortar according to the directions. I started by putting a thin layer of mortar in place, then notched it. You can see we're using spacers, but I ultimately took them out because I needed more flexibility in the placement. Then I just worked at making sure everything was level and made sure every tile had enough mortar. You can see this front tile wasn't touching at enough places, so we added some more for a nice tight fit. We used an old toothbrush to clean out the mortar between the grout lines. This is much easier to do before the mortar dries. I made sure to get everything done on the first step before moving on to the bottom step, as I didn't want to mess up my work. I repeated the same process for this step. The associate at Home Depot recommended we wet the back of each tile before placing for better adherence. Off camera, Mom was wetting the tiles before handing them to me. This whole process is messy, and that's why I'm wearing a jumpsuit to protect my arms and legs from the mortar. Here in the front, we're using plastic shims to create a space for the grout. To address the front issue, we decided to not replace them with the original gap, as we thought the tile separation would happen again in the future. But the reason they put that gapping in before was to make sure that the tiles were nice and straight. So that means that we're going to have some small gapping in the back here, and we're going to need to put in very small tiles at different sizes. We continued making sure each one had enough mortar underneath. You can see on this one we didn't have enough on the back, so I added some more. Since we don't have that gapping on the front anymore, we needed to cut this one side tile a little bit shorter. Next, we needed to address the awkward space in the back. So I carefully cut small pieces of tile to fit in the space. We waited 24 hours for that to cure, then mix up the grout and use a rubber float to apply. We used a sponge to clean up the tiles and microfiber cloths. A few days later, Mom sprayed grout sealer on all the grout lines to seal and keep them nice and clean over time. And here it is, all done. And it pretty much looks like it did before, which is the goal of a project like this. We'll have a link to all the materials we use on our website with a link in the description. We'll also be making 3 more videos going into more detail on how to remove and apply the mortar, how to cut the tile, and how to grout and seal the tile.
What we learned! The main resource we used was going to the Home Depot and talking with the associate in the tile department. Now, he was so informative. He told us some of the things we needed to do and pointed us in the right direction of the kind of materials that we needed to get. And everything that he suggested were things that we used. And then the other thing we did was do some online research and watch some YouTube videos and try to find out how to actually do the tiling technique.
We wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to get this done, so we made sure there was no one coming to visit, and we made sure that the weather was good, so we had to push it back a couple times, but we had the perfect timing to get it completed.
One of the things I wish we had done prior to getting started was to move the dirt away from the side of the steps, because we did end up having to replace one of those tiles on the side, and because of the dirt, we couldn't really get in there properly, so do that beforehand.
Make sure you take a picture of the mortar and the grout bag before you get started, because you're going to need to reference those later, and once they open, you're not going to be able to read it.
One of the things we used to help clean up the grout from the tiles was microfiber cloths, and it's best to use your old ones because they're lint-free. If you use a new one, you're liable to have lint, then you have to clean up that part.
We also learned that knee pads are a must in a project like this, so I used a knee pad that I moved around and Mom put on knee pads, and that worked great, so make sure to protect your knees.
Now the question is, can you do this yourself? Well, as you can see, we did do it ourselves. We will point out there was a lot of labor involved. It takes a lot of time to get up all that old grout. So you just have to decide whether you want to pay someone to do that or do you want to take the time and do it yourself.
So thanks for joining. If you want to see more projects from us, be sure to visit us at motherdaughterprojects.com. And if you want to keep up with what we're doing on a weekly basis, you can sign up for our free newsletter, and we send that out once a week. All right, thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.